joining us right now on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. You can check out all of his work over at 97.3 ESPN.com, and you can follow him on Twitter for all your NBA and Sixers coverage over at Kevin MCC973. He is Kevin McCormick, and he joins us now on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Kevin, I've spoken to Jason. I've spoken to Paul the last 2 days. It's only appropriate that I get you on today. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good. So, we're talking about, obviously, the game, the first preseason game, and obviously there's a lot of takeaways from the game. So I want to kind of open the door for you initially to say, was there something that stood out more than anything else from that first preseason game for you?
There's really two things, one on each side of the ball. The first thing that stood out to me almost from the get-go was how modern Sixers look. I mean, we saw last year the close fit on offense and limited floor spacing, but in the first preseason game, we saw an up-tempo pace. We saw a lot of looks early on in the shot clock. It was a lot more of an up-and-down game, so it was good to see the Sixers kind of catch up to the timeline of where basketball is right now. And defensively, I thought they looked amazing pretty much from the gate. The defense looked like it was in mid-season form. There was a lot of activity in the passing lanes, a lot of tip passes. They racked up 11 steals as a team. Danny Green had 4 himself. So it still looks like the Sixers are going to focus on really hanging their hat defensively.
When you think about that defensively, I know Doc Rivers said that he wanted this to be the number one defense in the league. So from what you saw, do you think they can meet that expectation?
Absolutely. If Tuesday night was, the first inkling of what they're going to be like defensively, I think as they get more time on the floor together and really get used to being out there as a group, I really think the sky's the limit defensively with this core, especially with guys like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid leading the charge. You're going to be, a stud defensive team just based off those guys alone.
Kevin, when I look at Ben Simmons in particular, I was bothered by the fact that still, even though it's preseason, I still don't see him looking for his shot. I don't mean a three-point shot. I mean just looking for his offense in general. Do you see that, okay, it's preseason, maybe he's just still trying to learn the offense, or is this the same player that has virtually been here for the last 4 to 5 years?
So I could agree to some of that. In the first half, it really looked like Ben was adapting to having all the new guys around him and really being in that new offensive system against an actual NBA team. But in the second half, I really thought he became more aggressive, and we got to see more of him getting a little downhill in the half court. We saw some instances where he was running pick and rolls with guards like Shake Milton and Seth Curry and getting guards matched up on him and being able to make the use of those mismatches. And we also saw him bring back that right-handed baby hook that we saw in his rookie season. So I could agree with you at times that it did look like he was still, shaking off the rust or the cobwebs of these new moving parts on the offense. But all in all, I thought he really settled in nicely at the start of the second half.
With all the reports of James Harden wants a trade. He wants to come to Philly. They're on the list. If you're Sixers management, do you make the Harden trade at all? Because my stance is I would wait to see what Simmons has become with the idea that obviously the Houston Rockets isn't going to wait on you, but I wouldn't be opposed for trading for James Harden because I do believe this team is a win-now ready team. Doc didn't come here for a rebuild. He came to win now.
I agree that the team's definitely in the win-now mode. They view their window of contention being open right now, but I really don't know if Harden's the answer. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's had an entire system, paved to his every call for almost a decade now in his time in Houston. I really don't know how good the acclimation would be if he were to come in here, kind of be almost in that backseat to Joel Embiid, because when he comes here, it's not, instantly going to become his team the way he's run the show in Houston. And we've seen in the past he's had a revolving door of co-stars around them. So if you mortgage your future and go and get a guy like James Harden, and then a year from now it turns out he doesn't like playing with Joel Embiid, now it's almost like the Jimmy Butler thing all over again, where you use up all these assets to go and acquire a star. He's disgruntled, and you're pretty much scrambling, trying to get back whatever you can to rectify the situation.
Kevin McCormick joined us here on the Boardwalk kind of hotline on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at KevinMCC973. Just going down that road, Kevin, we've heard Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers state that they came to Philadelphia because of Ben and Joel. So why is it that there's a contingent of fans, and Deshaun is not one of them, he's trying to be an objective observer here, but there's a contingent of fans that no matter what happens, unless Ben Simmons turns into Steph Curry, basically, they want Ben out of here, or until Joel Embiid wins the league MVP award, they want Embiid out of here. It's like they won't accept that Daryl and Doc literally came to Philadelphia because of these two stars.
Exactly. And not only come here to play with those two stars, but Daryl Morey worked around the clock this entire offseason to build a roster to maximize the two of them and get their games to hopefully turn that next step. I'm with you. I don't understand why fans are been so quick to try and run one out of town. I feel like most fans would beg for a Joel Embiid or a Ben Simmons to follow their franchise, and Philly fans are still clamoring to trade Simmons out of here. But all in all, I mean, if there's going to be the time for them to really change that narrative and show that they can be franchise cornerstones, it's going to be this year. You have a stacked coaching staff under Doc Rivers. Got Daryl Morey and Elton Brand running the show at the top. You now have arguably their most competent supporting cast. And not only is it their most competent supporting cast, we're going to have a full season to work with them. So, the time is really ticking right now.
Now, speaking of the time is ticking, there's no guarantee that by the time we actually have this all fleshed out, that this team is even going to be exactly the way we see it playing now, because let's be realistic. It was one preseason game, and at least for me, I can't take too hard of a judgment on anybody, but the one thing I do take from that preseason game is what happened to Dwight Howard? I mean, this guy is turned into the Energizer Bunny off the bench. He's talking to the media every single stinking day. I mean, who is this Dwight Howard? I don't recognize him.
It's absolutely unreal how he's been. It's actually, I was talking to Brian Taforic not too long ago about Dwight Howard and how he's pretty much changed the entire narrative of his career in these past 2 years. But I agree, he's been great. Watching him run up and down the floor, he still moves like he's in his 20s. You'd never guess that the man was 35 years old. But he is going to be a really nice spark for this bench unit. He seems to really be embracing that mentor role. Like I said, he runs the floor well. Him and Jake Milton were very fluid in the pick and roll game, which was a great sign. So all in all, we might be looking at the Dwight Howard coming to the Sixers on a vet minimum being the steal move of this offseason.
Kev, it's funny you talk about Shake because that's where I want to go next. Shake Milton really played well, and it kind of echoes what Doc's been talking about throughout training camp with him being so impressed with Shake Milton. Do you see this guy being someone off the bench who can get you buckets in a premium, and also somebody that they could possibly go to in the fourth quarter if he's on the floor with the starters to say, hey, we'll put the ball in your hands to make a play, shot making?
I think there's a real chance. I think the talk of Shake had such a small, when you have him coming out and playing the way he did to start the preseason shows that he's an everyday NBA player. There's already the chatter of he should possibly reinserted back into the starting lineup. But I would say that Doc is going to have a lot of fun with him. He's been a guy that he's talked about a lot since he came here. I feel like he has big things for him. He's said from the beginning he's going to give him as big as a green light as he can. We saw on Tuesday night against Boston. But in terms of being that guy late in the game with, guys like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, I don't really see him relying on Shake that late in games. But if Shake's a hot hand, I wouldn't put it past him. He really could be that, super sub kind of Lou Will-esque player for the Sixers this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously I meant in more of just a guard that can get his own shot, which they still need. I know Seth Curry's here in the starting lineup, and he can kind of do that. But I meant more in that role if he continues to play at this clip into the regular season. But my last thing is Tyrese Maxey. He came off the bench in the fourth quarter and kind of showed that jitterbug, defensive, and even made some shots that he did at Kentucky. Is there a chance if he continues to play well on Friday and in camp, can he crack the rotation early in the season, or is he going to be a guy that's going to have to earn his minutes throughout the early part?
I think it's going to take some time just because, he's had such a limited time to adapt to the NBA game, from having the delayed start due to COVID protocol to only being able to practice twice before taking the floor on Tuesday. So I think it's going to take some time, and I don't think they're really going to try and rush him along with rookies being on, such a different timeline than they typically are with, no summer league and not a full off season. But 3-4 months from now, I think there could be a real conversation after how he looked on Tuesday.
Kevin, one more for you, and we always appreciate you jumping on here on 97.3 ESPN. What are you looking for from tomorrow night's preseason game at 6 o'clock?
Or just, smoothing out the edges. I think that they played well on both sides of the floor. You would like to see that same level of defensive intensity that they showed on Tuesday. But in terms of the offensive end, just smoothing things out, just working on getting more used to each other on the floor, getting the new pieces integrated, whether it's Seth Curry, Danny Green. Still like to see a lot of pick and roll. I thought it played really well, and they used a lot of different nice combinations out there. But it's more just building momentum. I feel like they're very close to being in a good spot to start the season. So if they can just use this last preseason game to smooth out the edges and use it as one last test run, I think that could be the focus.
Make sure you follow Kevin on Twitter at KevinMCC973. Also check out all of his coverage of the Sixers over at 97.3ESPN.com, because realistically, we have the best team of coverage anywhere on planet Earth between Kevin McCormick, Paul Hudrick, and Jason Blevins, and nobody can dispute that, or they got to deal with me and his all guest Kevin appeared on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. Well, I'm more scary than you are.
Debatable.
Kevin, have a good one, man.
Absolutely, guys. Take care.